It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and welcome to 4th of July weekend 1990, July 6, 1990. And we've got two movies to look at today, and I'm actually kind of surprised they both weren't released on 4th of July, which was a Wednesday in 1990. You would think that you'd want that holiday traffic coming in here to see these two movies that are coming out. But for some reason they were released on July 6th instead. I don't know why, especially with the first movie that we're looking at. You've got, as we continue with the Copycat Summer, you've got a sequel to probably one of the most influential action films of the 1980s. Last year it was Lethal Weapon 2. This year it's Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
Emergencies. We are in a code yellow.
Instrument lighting system is down.
Backup systems won't come up. Every system's dead.
These guys shut us down.
Attention all controllers. We have a code red alert. We just about maybe 2 hours. After that, those planes low on fuel aren't going to be circling. They're going to be dropping on the White House lawn.
I want every officer recalled and assembled in body armor with full weaponry in the motor pool in 5 minutes. It's time to kick in.
Our own SWAT team's gone.
Well, maybe they're just a little bit more creative than you think.
Start looking for a new miracle.
Who the hell is this?
We don't need a loose cannon on this deck.
You get the hell out of my office before I throw you out of my damn airport.
You're the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Story of my life.
They say lightning doesn't strike twice.
That's how I spent Christmas last year.
They were wrong.
McLean, is this what you were expecting?
Nah, this is just the beginning.
Bruce Willis, Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
Of course, Die Hard 2 comes with the risk of trying to repeat the success of the first Die Hard, which was one of the biggest surprise success stories of 1988, and one of the movies that turned Bruce Willis into an action superstar after his years on Moonlighting. So there was a lot of high expectations with Die Hard 2, and many people said it was basically just a copy and paste of the first movie, but copy and pasting the first movie really isn't a bad thing if you're actually doing something pretty awesome with the second movie, which I think this movie does. But yeah, it's basically the same plot as the first movie. Instead of it taking place in a building, it's now taking place between an airport and an airplane up in the sky. But like I said, if it's done well, you could really get away with doing a copy and paste sequel. And it's pretty much what they do here, but it's still a lot of fun. Is it as good as the first Die Hard movie? No, nothing really could top what the first Die Hard movie did. Although Die Hard with a Vengeance did come close, but we'll get to that when that movie comes out in '95. But for what Renny Harlin had to do, the director of this, who stepped in for John McTiernan, and for a cast that includes not only original actors like Bruce Willis, Bonnie Bedelia, William Sadler, Reginald VelJohnson as a cameo in the beginning of the movie. But you also have the inclusion of some notable names, people like William Atherton, Franco Nero, John Amos, Dennis Franz, Fred Thompson, Cole Meany, who you've seen in a bunch of movies. A lot of the henchmen are recognizable names in this movie. Like you see Vondi Curtis Hall, you see John Leguizamo, you see Robert Patrick, who is 1 year away from becoming a big part of a big summer sequel in Terminator 2. You've got this incredible cast here, and they just work with these parts really well. The action sequences are still really incredible. They do so much with the snow and the airport and all the stuff they could do with it. The airplane explosions in this movie are still some of the most incredible looking action scenes you'll ever see. Like, the way these planes explode, it's practical effects, but they're practical effects done so well. Like, they really make you feel like they really make it feel like these are actual planes that are exploding all over this movie. And, yeah, like I said, but while the main crux of the story isn't as strong as the first movie is, this time around you can easily tell who's going to become who's double-crossing one another, and who's working for who. It's very predictable, but at the same time, like I said, if you're delivering something that's of quality and actually has a lot of fun elements to it, you can get away with it. And this movie has a lot of great action sequences in this movie that are just so well done and just so fun to watch all the time. Like, you don't even need to watch the movie. Just go to the YouTube or just watch some of the clips on there, and you still can feel like you're getting a lot out of it and still feel like you came out of it with something incredible. I mean, they did the best job that they could. I mean, they really couldn't top what they did with the first movie, but they did just enough to make it a fun movie. It's a fun summer action movie. It would have been cool to see this in the theater just to see how the audience would have reacted to this. Nothing more I gotta say. Die Hard 2, Die Harder. It may not be as good as the first one, but it's entertaining enough. It's more than entertaining enough to totally recommend it. So that's my thoughts on Die Hard 2. Now let's get on to the second movie that came out this weekend, and that was a movie that I've been known to flip-flop on over the years. So what are my thoughts on it now? Let's talk about the Jetsons movie.
25 years ago, they brought us a startling vision of the future. And now...
Help! Jane, stop this crazy thing!
they're back.
All right!
The Jetsons, in their first feature-length motion picture.
Congratulations!
Someone is sabotaging space race rockets.
We've lost 4 vice presidents.
And there's only one man for the job.
Jetson? I wouldn't use Jetson if space race rockets were going bankrupt.
He is expendable.
Perfect! Huh? Oh no! Space! The final frontier!
Jetsons, the movie. Featuring music performed by Tiffany. The first movie from the family that's truly ahead of its time. Universal Pictures presents a Hanna Barbera production. Jetsons, the movie.
So yeah, like I said, this movie is one that I keep going back and forth on. If you haven't heard about the production history of this, it's amazing how so many problems kept rising from this movie. So the film started off as a live-action film adaptation at Paramount with Gary Nardino, who did Star Wars, and that was supposed to be in '85. In fact, if you find the Paramount '85 trailer reel that they have for all the projects they had in production, it's in there at I think it's the last movie on there, along with the Peter Pan movie with that Steven Spielberg would later do for Columbia. But if you could find that video on there, you can definitely see that the last bit of it has the thing for the Jetsons movie. But that film never happened, and then Universal bought the rights to the Jetsons, and I think they bought their film rights to most of the Hanna Barbera properties, if I'm not mistaken. But then the movie actually goes into production, and then a lot of the problems come into hand. Most of the major cast of this movie ended up getting... they came back, but most of them didn't make it through the production of the film. Dawes Butler, who was the voice of Elroy, he fell ill with a stroke and had pneumonia and died in 1988 before he could even record any lines for the movie. And they had Chris Zimmerman's, the voice coordinator, Chris Zimmerman's son, Patrick, come in to do the voice, and he would later go on to do the voice of Tyke and Tom and Jerry Kids. But then George O'Hanlon, who had voiced George Jetson in the original series and everything up to this point, he died during the middle of production, and he died in February of '89 after he finished recording his lines. I think he actually could only record 1 hour at a time, according to Andrea Romano, who you know is a prolific voice director. He was only recording an hour at a time due to his illness, and I think he had his final stroke while he was at the studio finishing his lines. And if that wasn't enough, Mel Blanc died during the production of this movie, July 10th. And so they had to replace him with Jeff Bergman, who would also do the film voices for George as well. And you could definitely tell when it's Jeff Bergman and when it's Mel Blanc, because the voices are not very synced up very well. But if you listen to certain tracks in the movie, you can tell what lines Bergman is recording and what lines Hanlon and Blanc are recording. And then just when you think that couldn't get crazy enough, Janet Waldo, who played Judy Jetson in the original series and for most of the series up to that point, She actually recorded her lines for the movie, but her lines were later replaced by Tiffany, the pop singer at the time, who was still kind of popular, but her popularity wasn't really as strong as it was 2 years prior to it. And Universal did this behind her back. So even though Waldo has some lines in the movie that are still in the film, Universal thought Tiffany's involvement would result in a bigger performance, and so much so that this was a big problem that Romano actually tried to get her name off the finished film, but eventually does show up in the credits of the film. But to say that Tiffany's voice really does not sound like the right voice for Judy Jetson is an understatement, because when in this movie, she really does not have the right voice for Judy Jetson. Although I will admit, probably the best song she ever did in her career was You and Me, which you heard a little bit in that trailer there. If you listen to that song and watch the music video in the movie, it's pretty damn good. Like, I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, this is still a really good movie. I'm actually pretty surprised. I mean, this is still a really good song. I mean, it still holds up so many years later. Yeah, as far as the movie itself goes, like I said, I flip-flop back and forth on it. There are times when I don't like it. I don't think it's a really good movie. But then there are times when I come back to it and I'm just like, okay, this maybe isn't as bad as I remember it. I think right now, I like it, but I'm not in love with it. I do like some of the animation in this. I do feel, as I look at it again, and it's just like, this is pretty much what I expect from a Jetsons movie. It's like what I expect with the Bob's Burgers movie. I mean, I'm not expecting them to go too epic or too over the top with it, and it delivers a really good, in that movie, in the case of the Bob's Burgers movie, it delivers on what it's promising. With this, it does deliver a little bit of what it's promising. There are a little bit of elements where, like, the environmental message gets a little preachy, but not as preachy as some of the other movies of this caliber that would do these animated movies like Fern Gully or Once Upon a Forest, or movies like The Page Match, or these environmental message movies about how we should protect the environment and all that, and all these other things. And I think what really made me turn around with this movie is the way the film ends. Like, I never really thought about it, but then I watched Nostalgia Critic's review of Jetsons the movie, and he basically brings up the fact that he likes that the film, there's no real villain, there's no real gigantic battle at the end of the movie. The film the climax of the movie is basically a business deal, because, of course, you find out that these grungies, as they're called, which are pretty much kind of like reject gremlins, they're the ones messing up the plant that George's family have moved to, and George basically compromises a deal with Mr. Spacely to let the grungies work for them, and that way they won't. In exchange, they won't destroy their home. They're not destroying the machinery that's destroying their home, and so on and so forth. And to its credit, that's actually a pretty clever idea, for them to not go over the top with the ending of it. It's just a business deal that saves the day in the end, and I think that's kind of funny. So I give him a lot of credit for that. I give him a lot of credit for going that level, and it does work in the end. Like, does everything about this movie work? Not really. There are times when it is very dated, and it does feel, and the animation, while it can look pretty impressive on some levels, other levels not so much. The music overall is okay. There are some songs I think that are actually kind of catchy. The Tiffany song I just mentioned, and there's a couple of other songs in there with, I don't know who the person is that's singing this song, but like, he sounds like a mix of Justin Bieber and Miley Cyrus, kind of, because he has a couple of songs in this movie. Shane something, I can't remember the name now. Shane Sutton is his name. I had to look it up. He did Staying Together, and then he does the end credits song With You All the Way, which for the time period, they're actually not bad songs. Most of the songs in this movie are actually pretty good. I mean, there are some songs that are very dated. There's a rap at the end of the movie. But other than that, though, the music overall is pretty good. Even the score by John Debney is very well done. It's a great score that he has for this movie. So overall, I really have come around to this movie. I don't think it's a great movie overall, but I think there is more than enough there to actually warrant some rewatchability to it. Or maybe I just love it for nostalgic sake, because I did watch this movie a lot growing up as a kid. I saw the videotape for the longest time until I just sold it on eBay recently when I updated the DVD and the Blu-ray. But, yeah, the Jetsons movie is actually not as bad as I remember it. like I said, it's not a great movie, but it is still a fun movie regardless. I think you could, if you're a fan of the Jetsons, you could watch it and you have a lot of fun with it. Non-Jetsons fans, I think you might not like it all that much, but overall, I say it's a much better movie than I thought it would have been before. But like I said, it's something that I kept going back and forth on. But right now, I'm feeling like, okay, I'd definitely watch this again if I get the chance to. So there you go. That's Jetsons the movie. So with that said, that's going to wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We got a good one for you the next time around, July 13th. We've got one of the biggest movies of the year, and another movie that I wasn't really that too much into the first time around, but I've really grown to love it. It's of course one of the biggest movies of the year, and it's one of the most memorable romantic movies of all time. I'm of course talking about Ghost. We also have the re-release of Jungle Book, and we also have the second movie from director Renny Harlin this summer, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, and Bill Murray and Gina Davis and Randy Quaid in Quick Change. So pretty good week on tap for the next time around. So definitely check that out. So other than that, though, thank you guys for watching. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another new episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. And until then, take care.